Hi, everyone, and welcome to this Qualitative Research podcast titled Let's Talk About Research, a space where we can share and reflect about academic topics. My name is Jacqueline Lima, and this afternoon we're going to talk about different qualitative research methods and approaches. Let me introduce you to two wonderful classmates that are also fascinated with this topic. Jason Alcivar and Damaris Acosta. How are you doing?
Hi Jacqueline and Damaris, I'm glad to be here. This topic is one of my favorites because it has to do with what we study and what we live.
Hi everyone, thanks for inviting me. I'm ready to talk about and share some ideas.
All right, let's start with the first question. Which qualitative research characteristic do you think is the most important and why?
In my opinion, I think holistic because it is mainly focused on different aspects of people. With this said, I mean their emotions, their environment, and social aspects.
In my case, I am fascinated by the fact that qualitative research is flexible, so I find utterly that valuable that you can you could be able to adapt and also build deeper questions related to the answer. So in this case, it cannot be done in a closed question survey.
I agree with you, with both of you, and I would also like to add another remarkable characteristic, being interpretative. I think it's relevant to say that with this type of research, we're not looking for just one truth, but to understand the different realities that people live in. Now, let's continue with the second question. As future English teachers, which method seems more applicable to your career and context, and why?
Well, in my case, I lean more towards phenomenology because I'm interested more in how people experience learning as a second language. So, in this approach, allows me to understand people' experiences beyond the results.
I like action research instead. As a future teacher, I am more interested in enhancing real-time practices during classes. This approach allows me not only to investigate, I can also participate and transform reality, which I find really powerful.
Wonderful choices. I would agree with Damaris in this question. Phenomenology is an approach that goes well with English teachers. Learning a language is not easy for everyone. So, for this reason, I think phenomenology allows English teachers to listen to what their students' necessities are. So, take a look at this paragraph in the next slide. Mm, Feminist research tried to focus on the experiences of women and marginalized groups, where traditional approaches were challenged, and a model of ideas was introduced in which the researcher was part of the process, and therefore their emotional and personal exposure came to the forefront, later by 2003. Have you heard something about it?
In my case, yes, I think it's a really important approach because it makes visible that to the ones that have been historical ignored. So I like that the researchers become an active part and not just a natural observer.
In my opinion, I think I find it really valuable that subjectivity and personal experience are recognized as part of the process. I think this makes this approach stand out in more conservative ways.
I agree and also don't with Damaris because I recognize that feminist approach has given voice to marginalized groups. In fact, I think that's the reason women have been able to study until now. However, I guess it has actually become an excuse for degrading men. Therefore, I think going to extremes is unhealthy and unnecessary. Now, let's move on to research methods. Let's talk about the observation method. Have you noticed that people seem to act differently when they feel they are being observed?
I totally agree. It's enough to be in front of a camera or feeling that someone is taking notes of you and looking at you and make you change. I think this could modify data and make it less genuine.
In my case, that's why I like participant observation the most because the researchers get into the groups and people are more natural and relaxed.
Yes, I agree with Damaris. ECA 2021 mentions that many times the researcher needs to conduct an overt observation because of potential ethical issues related to concealing his or her observation.
Yes, I think ethical issues are useful. I try to apply the non-participant observation method for homework. However, it wasn't easy to take pictures. People are less prone to expose themselves than before.
In my case, I guess it's a due to privacy rights or a minor exposure risks.
Okay, sorry to interrupt you, but we need to move on to the last question of this podcast. Let's talk about the focus group method. Which benefit do you think that is it has when it comes to teaching or learning a language?
Well, I think one of the biggest benefits of this method is that it encourage the participation and interaction. And when we talk about the focus groups, we feel more at ease sharing their thoughts because they see their classmates doing the same.
You mean learners? Learners feel more at ease, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I think this method allows teachers to understand their students' perspective. Jason, is there something else you would like to add before we can say goodbye to our audience?
Yes, I like to remark that according to Adekola and Mevandu Mutsushi 2024, focus group's objective is to create a friendly, non-threatening, comfortable, not judgmental, and permissive classroom atmosphere that is crucial for the successful implementation of focus teaching. We can say that some learners aren't afraid to speak in front of others. Even if their accent is not perfect, this becomes a motivation for their classmates to speak without any worry or anything that makes them scared.
Great input, Jason. I think it's time to finish this episode where we have been able to analyze some aspects of qualitative research methods and approaches when it comes to language teaching. Thank you and see you soon in another episode of Let's Talk About Research by Damaris and Jason.
Goodbye.